She was giving up, sitting alone in a stained wedding dress, wheelchair locked in place, tears streaming down her face. Her groom never showed. Instead, he sent a text. "I need someone complete, not a liability." But then, someone heard her crying. A widowed father, 2 little girls, 1 moment of kindness. What happened next shattered every rule about how families are supposed to form. This is the story of a rejected bride and the single dad who did the unthinkable. Before we continue, please tell us where in the world are you tuning in from. We love seeing how far our stories travel. Chris Williams heard it before he saw it, a sound that didn't belong in the peaceful autumn afternoon. Raw, desperate sobbing coming from somewhere beyond the flowering bushes near the pond. He'd come to this park for a reason, a painful one. 2 years ago today, his wife had died, and this place, her favorite spot in the world, was where he brought their 7-year-old twins, Avery and Chloe, to remember her, to keep her memory alive in their hearts, even as her voice faded from their minds.
But now, someone else's grief was cutting through the quiet Saturday afternoon like broken glass. "Daddy, do you hear that?" Avery tugged on his sleeve, her long curly brown hair catching the light. "Someone's really sad." Chris looked down at his daughters, their young faces still shadowed from their own tears about their mother. Part of him wanted to stay cocooned on their picnic blanket, honoring his wife's memory without intrusion, but the crying continued, the kind of sobbing that came from a soul completely shattered. He recognized it. He'd done it himself, alone in his bedroom after the girls fell asleep night after night for 2 years. "Girls, stay right here on the blanket. Don't move, okay? Someone might need help." Chris stood and walked toward the sound, autumn leaves crunching under his feet. As he rounded the flowering bushes, he stopped cold. There, hidden in a quiet corner off the main path, sat a young woman in a wheelchair. She wore a wedding dress, a beautiful white gown with delicate lace sleeves, now stained with dirt and grass at the hem. Her veil lay trampled on the ground beside her. She had buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking violently with each sob, making sounds like an animal in pain. Chris's heart broke for this stranger. He cleared his throat gently. "Excuse me, are you all right?"
The woman's head jerked up, revealing a face ravaged by tears. Her makeup had run in dark streaks down her cheeks. Her eyes were swollen and red, and her expression was pure devastation. When she saw him, embarrassment flooded her features, and she quickly tried to wipe her face. "I'm fine," she said automatically, her voice hoarse and cracking. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to disturb anyone. I'll leave." "Please don't apologize," Chris said softly, taking a careful step closer. "I'm Chris Williams." She stared at him for a long moment, her jaw clenched tight as if she was trying to hold back a dam that was already breaking. Chris could see the war in her eyes, the desperate need to let it all out, battling against years of learned self-reliance. She swallowed hard. "I'm Serena Miller." "Serena," Chris repeated gently. "I don't want to intrude, but I can see you're going through something terrible, and I just wanted you to know that you don't have to be alone right now. Whatever happened, you don't have to carry it by yourself in this moment." Something in his tone, the genuine compassion in his eyes, seemed to crack her defenses. Her face crumpled, fresh tears spilling over. "You don't understand," she whispered. "Maybe not," Chris agreed, "but I know what it's like to feel completely broken, and sometimes it helps to say it out loud."
Serena looked at him, really looked at him, and seemed to see something there that convinced her he was safe. She took a shaky breath. "He didn't show up." The words came out barely above a whisper. Chris waited, giving her space. "My fiancé," Serena continued, her voice trembling, "he didn't show up to our wedding." Chris felt his chest tighten. "I'm so sorry." She stared down at her hands, twisted together in her lap. I waited at that church for over an hour. Everyone was there. All the guests, the priest, the photographers, everyone. A tear dropped onto her white dress, then another. People were throwing weird glances at me. I could see them whispering, checking their phones, looking at me with pity. And I just kept smiling, kept saying he was probably stuck in traffic, that he'd be there any minute. She stopped, her breathing ragged. Chris knelt down beside her wheelchair, making himself eye level with her. What happened? He never came. Her voice broke completely. After everything, after humiliating me in front of everyone I know, all I got was a text message. She let out a bitter, broken laugh. A text message! Can you believe that? Chris shook his head slowly, anger building in his chest. He couldn't even tell me in person, Serena continued, the words pouring out faster now. He had all the time in the world to tell me before today, but he had to wait until I was sitting there in my wedding dress with everyone staring at me like I was some kind of pathetic joke. You're not a joke, Chris said firmly. What he did, that's cruel.
Serena fumbled for her phone with shaking hands, pulled up the message, held it out to him. Her hand was trembling so badly, Chris had to steady it to read. I've thought it over, and I can't do this. I need someone complete, not a liability. The words hit Chris like a punch to the gut. A liability, Serena whispered, pulling her phone back. That's what I am to him. She gestured at her wheelchair, her face twisted with pain and fury. I was in an accident 8 months ago. Chris stayed quiet, letting her talk. Motorcycle crash. I wasn't even driving. I was just on the back of a friend's bike when a van hit us. She paused, staring at nothing. My friend walked away fine. But me? She laughed again, that same hollow sound. I haven't walked since. Chris felt tears burning in his own eyes. He'd been a widower for 2 years, raising his twin daughters alone. And he thought he'd seen cruelty. But this? Abandoning someone on their wedding day? Calling them a liability? This was a different kind of heartless. Serena, she said all the right things at first, she interrupted, as if she needed to get it all out now or she never would. He said it didn't matter, that he loved me regardless, that we'd figure it out together. She wiped her face roughly. Serena, Chris began softly. Serena cut in, her voice trembling, as if she needed to spill everything before she lost the courage. He said all the right things at first, said it didn't matter, that he loved me regardless, that we'd figure it out together. She wiped her face roughly. But over the months, he started changing, becoming cold, distant. He'd snap at me for the smallest things. Her voice dropped. He'd make comments about how difficult everything had become, how much harder his life was now. Chris watched as she struggled with the words. But I made excuses for him, Serena said quietly. I told myself he was just stressed, that he needed time to adjust, that if I was just patient enough, understanding enough, if I didn't complain about my pain or my struggles. She trailed off. Why did you make excuses? Chris asked gently. Serena looked at him, and in her eyes he saw a loneliness so deep it made his own grief feel small. I'm an orphan, she whispered. I grew up in foster care, bounced from home to home. I've been alone my entire life, Chris, and he was the first person who made me feel like I belonged somewhere, like I had a family. A sob caught in her throat. So I ignored the signs. I convinced myself that if I just loved him enough, he would remember why he loved me. She covered her face with her hands. I was so stupid. No, Chris said firmly. He reached out, hesitated, then gently touched her shoulder. No, Serena, you weren't stupid. You were hopeful. You were loyal. Those aren't weaknesses.
Then why does it feel like I'm being punished for them? She asked, her voice muffled behind her hands. Chris didn't have an answer for that. He just stayed there, kneeling beside her wheelchair, his hand on her shoulder as she cried. Finally, she lowered her hands and looked at him. I showed the priest the text and left as fast as I could. The embarrassment, the humiliation, it was too much to bear. I called a cab to bring me here because I couldn't face going back to my apartment. I just wanted to be somewhere beautiful for a little while before I have to figure out what to do with the rest of my life. What do you mean, figure out what to do? Chris asked. My apartment was temporary. We were supposed to move into his place after the wedding. Now I have nowhere to go, no family to call. She looked directly at Chris, her eyes red and exhausted. No one who cares whether I exist or not. I'm completely, utterly alone. The rawness of her pain hit Chris like a physical blow. He found himself kneeling fully beside her wheelchair now, his own eyes burning with tears. For 2 years he had been drowning in his own grief, barely keeping his head above water as he tried to be both mother and father to Avery and Chloe. He worked his accounting job during the day and came home to homework, dinner, bedtime stories, and the crushing weight of loneliness after the girls fell asleep. He knew what it meant to feel alone in a crowded world. Serena, he said quietly, what he did, the way he treated you, that says everything about him and absolutely nothing about you. You're not a liability. You're a person going through something incredibly difficult, and you deserved someone who would stand beside you, not someone who would abandon you in the cruelest way possible. Serena looked at him through her tears. Why do you care? You don't even know me. Chris took a shaky breath. Because 2 years ago today, my wife died. Serena's expression shifted, surprise mixing with her grief. A distracted driver hit her car head-on and she was gone before the ambulance even arrived. He gestured back toward the picnic blanket where his daughter sat. And I have 2 7-year-old daughters who are sitting on that blanket right now, trying to remember what their mother's voice sounded like, because it's fading from their memories. And that terrifies them. And it terrifies me. Tears were streaming down his face now. I'm barely holding it together most days. I cry in the shower so they don't hear me. I lie awake at night terrified that I'm failing them, that I'm not enough, that they'll grow up broken because I can't be both parents no matter how hard I try. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. So when I hear someone in pain, someone who feels alone in the world, I can't just walk away, because I know how dark that loneliness is. I know how it feels to wonder if you're strong enough to keep going. He looked directly at Serena. And I need you to know that you are. You're still here, Serena. After everything you've been through, the accident, the pain, the betrayal, you're still here. That takes incredible strength. They sat there together in silence for a moment. 2 strangers, crying in a park, connected by the universal language of grief and loss. Finally, Serena reached out and touched his hand. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for not leaving me alone. Daddy? Both Chris and Serena looked up. Avery and Chloe had crept over despite his instructions, their young faces filled with concern, their own eyes still red from crying about their mother. Girls, I asked you to stay on the blanket, Chris said gently, wiping his face. But we heard you crying, and we wanted to make sure you were okay. She looked at Serena with the brutal honesty of childhood. Why are you crying in a princess dress? Serena managed a trembling smile despite everything. It was supposed to be my wedding dress, but the person I was going to marry didn't come to the wedding. What? Avery's face scrunched up in outrage. That's really, really mean. Why would someone do that?
I don't know, sweetheart, Serena said softly. That's the meanest thing I ever heard, Chloe declared, her small hands balling into fists. Our mommy died 2 years ago today. That's why we're at the park. This was her favorite place. Daddy says she's watching us from heaven and that she'd want us to be kind to people who are sad. The simple, honest statement made Serena's tears flow again, but this time they felt different, less like despair and more like something breaking open in her chest. "I'm so sorry about your mommy," Serena said, her voice thick with emotion. "I bet she was wonderful." "She was the best mommy in the whole world," Avery said solemnly. Then, with the matter-of-fact kindness only a child could deliver, she added, "You can share our picnic if you want. We have sandwiches and juice and cookies that Daddy made. They're not as good as Mommy's, but they're still pretty good. And you can help us feed the ducks," Chloe offered, reaching out to touch Serena's hand. "We brought extra bread." Chris looked at Serena, at this woman who'd been so thoroughly broken by the cruelty of someone who was supposed to love her. His daughters, his beautiful, kind-hearted daughters who'd learned compassion from their mother, were offering this stranger exactly what she needed, to not be alone. "The girls are right," Chris said. "You don't have to be alone right now. Would you join us? No pressure, but the offer is genuine."
Serena looked between Chris and the twins, and something shifted in her expression. Hope, fragile but real, flickered in her eyes. She swallowed hard. "I would like that. Very much. Thank you. Have you ever felt completely alone, like the world had forgotten you existed? Drop a comment below. You're not alone in feeling that way." What happened next surprised all of them. As Chris helped Serena navigate her wheelchair over to their picnic blanket, the girls immediately flanked her, chattering about the ducks and their school and their favorite things, and slowly, so slowly, Serena began to smile. A real smile, small at first but growing. They fed the ducks together, the girls delighting in showing Serena the special technique their mother had taught them. Toss the bread in an arc so the shy ducks in the back get some too. They ate sandwiches and slightly burnt cookies, and Avery insisted Serena try the juice boxes because they taste better when you drink them outside. Chris watched as his daughter's natural kindness worked a kind of magic. They didn't treat Serena with pity or awkwardness. They just treated her like a person, like a friend. And he watched Serena transform before his eyes. The devastation on her face gradually replaced by something that looked almost like peace. "Your girls are amazing," Serena said softly to Chris, as Avery and Chloe chased a particularly bold duck near the water's edge.
"They get it from their mother," Chris replied, his voice thick with emotion. He stared out at the pond, remembering the countless Saturdays they'd spent here as a family of 4. She always said that kindness costs nothing, but means everything. I think she'd be proud of them today." "She would be," Serena agreed, watching the girls laugh as the duck waddled away. "And she'd be proud of you, too." As the afternoon stretched on, they talked. Really talked. Chris told her about the impossible balance of single parenthood, the guilt he carried over every little thing he couldn't do perfectly, the way he stayed up late baking cookies that never tasted quite right because he needed to honor his wife's memory somehow, the fear that his daughters would grow up with holes in their hearts that he couldn't fill. Serena shared stories from her childhood, the loneliness of foster care, the resilience she'd built moving from home to home, never quite belonging anywhere. She told him about her job at the library before the accident, how she loved being surrounded by stories and helping people find exactly the book they needed. And she told him about the 8 months since the crash, the physical therapy, the pain, the slow realization that her fiancé was pulling away even as she needed him most.
When the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Chris found himself not wanting the day to end. This stranger had become someone important in the span of a few hours, not because of romance or attraction, but because of something deeper, a recognition of shared pain and resilience. "Serena," Chris said as they prepared to part ways, "I know we just met, but I'd like to give you my number. If you ever need someone to talk to or help with anything, please call or text me. I mean it." Serena's eyes filled with fresh tears, but she was smiling. I'd like that. And here, let me give you mine too. They exchanged phones, each typing in their contact information. When Chris handed hers back, Serena held it for a moment, staring at his name on her screen. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what I did to deserve meeting you all today, but I'm so grateful." "Daddy always says the universe puts people in our path when we need them most," Chloe announced, hugging Serena's arm. "Maybe we all needed each other today." "Maybe we did, sweetheart," Chris agreed, his heart feeling lighter than it had in 2 years. "Maybe we really did." 3 days later, Chris's phone rang while he was making dinner. "Hello? It's Chris. It's Serena from the park." "Serena." Chris smiled, his heart lifting. "I'm so glad you called. How are you doing?"
There was a pause. Then, "Better than I thought I'd be. I found a support group for people with spinal injuries. First meeting is tomorrow. I'm nervous, but I'm going to try." "That's incredible," Chris said, genuine pride in his voice. "That takes real courage. I keep thinking about what you said, that I'm still here. That has to mean something, right?" "It means everything." They talked for over an hour that night, about everything and nothing, and when they finally hung up, Chris realized he was smiling wider than he had in years. The next week, Serena called again, this time to tell him about the support group, how terrifying and wonderful it had been to meet others who understood. Chris told her about Chloe's latest drawing, a picture of their day at the park, with Serena included as part of the family. "She drew me?" Serena's voice caught with emotion. "In purple," Chris confirmed, her favorite color. "She says purple is for special people." 2 weeks after they met, Chris invited Serena back to the park. She came, and this time the girls brought drawings they'd made for her and a list of book recommendations from Avery that was 3 pages long. "You really weren't kidding about the enthusiasm," Serena laughed, looking at the list. "I warned you," Chris said, grinning.
They made it a weekly ritual. Every Saturday, they'd meet at the park. Sometimes they'd feed the ducks. Sometimes they'd just sit and talk while the girls played. And slowly, week by week, Serena began to heal. Not just from the wedding that never happened, but from a lifetime of feeling like she didn't belong anywhere. 1 month became 2, and then Serena started joining them for dinners at Chris's house. The first time she came over, the girls had decorated the entire living room with welcome signs and balloons. "This is too much," Serena said, tears in her eyes. "It's not enough," Avery declared seriously. "We're really happy you're here." The dinners became a regular thing, twice a week, then 3 times. Serena would help the girls with homework, teach them about her favorite books, listen to their stories about school with genuine interest. She video called them on the nights she wasn't there just to say goodnight. And Chris watched as his daughters, who'd been so sad for so long, started to smile more, laugh more. They still missed their mother, and they always would, but Serena wasn't replacing her. She was filling a different space in their hearts. 6 months after they met, Chris found himself on his porch with Serena after the girls had gone to bed. "Do you ever think about that day in the park? How close I came to giving up?"
"All the time," Chris admitted. "And I think about how close I was to staying on that blanket, to not investigating the crying. How easily we could have missed each other." "But we didn't," Serena said, reaching for his hand. "The universe put us in each other's path exactly when we needed it most." Chris squeezed her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Chloe was right that day. We all needed each other." Serena turned to look at him, her eyes reflecting the porch light. "Chris, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "I love you," she whispered. "I love you and those amazing girls. You've given me a reason to believe in happiness again, in family, in belonging somewhere." Chris felt his heart swell. He'd been afraid to say it first, afraid it was too soon, afraid she might not feel the same way. But hearing those words from her unlocked something in his chest. "I love you too," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've made our family whole in ways I didn't think were possible. The girls and I, we were just surviving before. But now,
Now we're living again." They kissed under the stars, two broken people who'd found their way to wholeness in each other. Life has a way of breaking us, just to rebuild us stronger. Never stop believing in second chances.
12 months after they met, Serena moved into an accessible apartment just 10 minutes from Chris's house. She'd gotten a job doing digital cataloging for a library network, remote work that allowed her flexibility and brought back her love of books. But more than that, she was part of their daily lives now. She came over for breakfast before the girls went to school. She helped Chris with grocery shopping and meal planning. She attended every school event, every parent-teacher conference, every dance recital. The girls started calling her Rena with casual affection. They ran to her first with scraped knees and exciting news. They sought her advice on friendship problems and showed her their latest artwork before anyone else. And Chris fell more in love with her every single day. 24 months after they met, they returned to the park together. This time, it wasn't just to remember his wife, it was to celebrate how far they'd all come. "This is where it all started," Serena said softly as they reached their spot by the pond. "The worst and best day," Chris agreed, kneeling beside her in her wheelchair. "Finding you so broken and realizing that maybe we could heal each other." "You saved my life that day," Serena said, her eyes shining with tears. "All three of you. I thought I'd lost everything, but really I'd just shed the wrong person to make room for the right ones." "Group hug," Avery called, and suddenly all four of them were tangled together, laughing and crying at the same time. "I love our family," Chloe declared. "Mommy would be happy we found each other, right, Daddy?"
Chris looked at his daughters, at Serena, at this beautiful, unexpected family they'd built from broken pieces. "Yes, sweetheart, I think she'd be very happy. We didn't replace her, we just made room in our hearts for more love. Sometimes the people who heal us are the ones we least expect. Have you experienced this kind of unexpected connection? Share your story in the comments." 3 years passed like chapters in a beautiful book. Serena had moved in with them after 2 years of dating, taking things slowly, building trust brick by brick. The house had been modified for her wheelchair, but more importantly, it had been transformed by her presence into a real home. She was there for everything: first days of school, lost teeth, bad dreams, good report cards. She wasn't trying to replace their mother. She honored that memory alongside Chris. But she'd become something essential: family. And Chris had learned something profound: that loving again didn't mean forgetting, that his heart was big enough to hold both his wife's memory and this new, unexpected love, that healing didn't mean the pain disappeared, it meant learning to carry it alongside joy. One evening, after the girls had gone to bed, Chris found Serena in the backyard, looking up at the stars. His hands were shaking, not from grief this time, but from nervous anticipation. The girls were in on the plan. They'd helped him pick out the ring 2 weeks ago, sworn to secrecy with the seriousness only 10-year-olds could muster. "Hey," he said softly, sitting beside her wheelchair. "Remember when we met? How you said you'd lost everything?" "I remember," Serena said, smiling. "I was so wrong. I hadn't lost everything. I just cleared space for something better."
"These 3 years with you have been..." Chris took a breath. "You've reminded me what it means to be happy. You've shown my girls that family isn't just biology. It's choosing each other every single day. And I want to keep choosing you. Every day. For the rest of my life." He pulled out a small box, opening it to reveal a simple, elegant ring. "Serena Miller, will you marry me?" Serena's hands flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face, but unlike that day in the park 3 years ago, these were tears of pure joy. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, yes, yes." From the upstairs window, 2 small faces pressed against the glass, grinning from ear to ear.
The wedding was small and intimate. Just close friends, Serena's support group family, co-workers from Chris's firm, and of course, Avery and Chloe as junior bridesmaids, in dresses they'd helped pick out. This time, there was no empty church, no pitying glances, no cruel text message. This time, when Serena waited at the altar, Chris was already there, tears streaming down his face as he watched her come down the aisle. And when she reached him, he whispered, "I see you. All of you. And you're perfect." "I see you too," Serena whispered back. "And we're home." The girls stood beside them, holding hands, completing the circle. When the officiant pronounced them married, Avery and Chloe cheered so loud the entire room erupted in laughter. And as Chris kissed his bride, his partner, his best friend, his family, he thought about that day in the park 3 years ago.
How grief had brought him there. How grief had brought her there too. And how sometimes the universe breaks us open not to destroy us, but to rebuild us into something stronger. 1 month after the wedding, on a sunny Saturday afternoon, the four of them returned to the park. They spread out their quilted blanket near the pond in the exact spot where everything had changed. Chris unpacked sandwiches and juice boxes. Serena had baked cookies, really good ones this time. Avery had brought a book to read aloud. Chloe had brought bread for the ducks. "Remember when we first met here?" Serena asked, looking at the flowering bushes where Chris had found her. "How could I forget?" Chris said, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. "You were crying in a wedding dress." "And now I'm here after wearing a wedding dress that actually meant something," Serena laughed. "It's not funny," Avery said seriously, looking up from her book. "It's like destiny, like in the stories." "Maybe it is," Chris agreed. He looked at his daughters, at Chloe feeding the ducks with focused determination, at Avery, already lost in her book, at Serena, smiling beside him, wearing the simple gold band that matched his own. His family. Complete and whole in ways he'd never imagined possible 3 years ago. "You know what?" Serena said softly, watching the sunlight dance on the water. "That day when my fiancé didn't show up, I thought it was the end of everything. But it was really the beginning. I had to lose the wrong person to find my real family."
Chris kissed her temple. "And I thought I'd lost my chance at happiness forever. But you taught me something important, that the heart doesn't replace love. It just expands to hold more of it." "Is this too mushy?" Chloe called from the water's edge. "Because it's getting really mushy over there." They all laughed, and Chris pulled both girls into a group hug with Serena at the center. One day, Chris said to his daughters, "When you're older, I hope you remember this, that some of the worst days of our lives lead to the best ones, that family isn't about perfection, it's about showing up, especially when it's hard, and that kindness matters, always." "We'll remember, Daddy," Avery promised. As they settled in for their picnic, the pond shimmering in the afternoon light, Chris looked around at his family and felt something he hadn't felt in years: complete peace. They'd all been broken in different ways, but together they'd built something unbreakable. They'd built a family, not by replacing what was lost, but by making space for what was found, not by forgetting the past, but by honoring it while embracing the future, not by chance, but by choice, choosing each other every single day. And in that quiet park, where grief had once brought them together, love kept them whole.
Friends, if this story touched your heart the way it touched mine, if it reminded you of the power we all have to change someone's life with a simple act of kindness, and sometimes our darkest moments lead us exactly where we're meant to be, please don't just watch and walk away. Hit that subscribe button for more stories that restore your faith in humanity. Share the story with someone who needs to remember that kindness is never wasted. Thanks for watching, and remember, you're never truly alone.